Hello everyone, I am Joshi Salvani and today I am going to present to you the direction of the blood through the heart in three types of circulation: the coronary circulation, pulmonary circulation, and the systemic circulation. So here is a drawing of the frontal section of the heart, revealing its four chambers for easier visualization. We have here the left atrium, the right atrium, the right ventricle, and the left ventricle. We have the coronary circulation. This circulation is characterized by the movement of the blood throughout the blood vessels that supply the myocardium or the heart muscle. The coronary circulation is primarily controlled by local metabolic factors such as adenosine triphosphate and oxygen availability, as well as the help of sympathetic innervation. The coronary circulation starts at the left ventricle, right here. And the blood will be pumped into the aortic semilunar valve right here, going into the ascending aorta, and will now be split into the right and left coronary arteries, which will now follow the coronary arterial circulation. Coronary arterial circulation will start at the base of the aorta together with the right and left coronary arteries. The left coronary artery gives rise to the circumflex artery and the left anterior descending artery, while the marginal artery and the posterior descending artery branches off the right coronary artery. These arteries supply blood to the heart, while the cardiac veins drains away the blood after it has been deoxygenated. The cardiac veins are mainly composed of the great cardiac vein, the middle cardiac vein, the posterior vein of the left ventricle, and the small cardiac vein, which drain into the coronary sinus and into the right atrium. With that, the coronary circulation ends and the pulmonary circulation begins. To summarize the coronary circulation, from the left ventricle, the blood will be pumped into the aortic semilunar valve, going into the ascending aorta and to the right and left coronary arteries, where we have the circumflex artery and the left anterior descending artery in the left coronary artery, while the marginal artery and the posterior descending artery branches off from the right coronary artery, which will now go into the great cardiac vein, middle cardiac vein, posterior vein of the left ventricle, and the small cardiac vein, which drain into the coronary sinus and into the right atrium. Next up is pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary circulation carries blood from the heart and to the lungs for gas exchange and back to the heart again. But how does blood flow through the heart? So the deoxygenated blood from the upper half of the body enters this one, the superior vena cava, and the deoxygenated blood from the lower half of the body enters the inferior vena cava. And the blood from both sides proceed here in the right atrium and will now pass through the tricuspid valve right here and will reach the right ventricle. As you can see right here, the right ventricle, which signals the start of the pulmonary circulation. So from the right ventricle, the blood will now be pumped into the pulmonary semilunar valve, going to the pulmonary trunk, which will now be split into the right and left pulmonary artery. And the pulmonary arteries will bring the blood to the right and left lungs. In the pulmonary capillaries, the deoxygenated blood takes up oxygen and releases carbon dioxide, allowing gas exchange. Now the blood would be oxygen-rich or will become oxygenated blood. From the lungs, the oxygenated blood or oxygen-rich blood will enter the right and left pulmonary veins. These ones right here, the red ones, going into the left atrium, which signals the end of pulmonary circulation. To summarize pulmonary circulation, the deoxygenated blood will start in the right ventricle and will now be pumped into the pulmonary trunk, branching off to the right and left pulmonary arteries, and will go to the right and left lungs for gas exchange. And now the oxygenated blood or oxygen-rich blood will pass through the pulmonary veins, going into the left atrium. After the pulmonary circulation comes the systemic circulation. The systemic circulation carries blood from the heart to the tissues of the body and back to the heart again. From the left atrium, right here, the oxygenated blood will pass through the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve here and will now go to the left ventricle, this one. And the blood will be pumped into the aortic semilunar valve. From here, it will go to here and reach the ascending aorta. The aorta makes an inverted U-turn forming the aortic arch, which gives rise to the branches that supply the upper region of the body consisting of the head, neck, and the upper limbs. The aorta continues posterior to the heart, which is characterized by the descending aorta, which travels through the thoracic and the abdominopelvic cavities, supplying its organs and also the lower limbs. In the systemic capillaries, which are the junction points between the arteries and the veins, gas exchange occurs, resulting in deoxygenated blood. So the deoxygenated blood will once again enter here in the superior vena cava and here in the inferior vena cava and end up into the right atrium once again, constituting the systemic circulation. To summarize the systemic circulation, from the left ventricle, the blood will be pumped into the aortic semilunar valve, going to the ascending aorta and into the aortic arch to the body tissues. From there, the blood will now enter the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava and end up into the right atrium. So that is all for my presentation of the direction of the blood flow through the heart in 3 types of circulation: the coronary circulation, pulmonary circulation, and the systemic circulation. Thank you and stay safe.